Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for tuning in for another episode. The other day, I did a video regarding influential soft plastics, and because I enjoyed doing that video, I thought I'd do the same thing with some hard baits. And I found it to be a lot more difficult with hard baits, and I don't know if that's because hard baits have been along for a lot longer time period, or if it's just because there's so many different categories. I felt like I could talk about 20 different baits that were very, very influential within a specific technique or a type of bait. But I did grab here a handful of them that I thought I would talk about. They're baits that still catch them today. That was one of the things that I ran into an issue with. There's a lot of baits that I feel like are very, very influential baits, but aren't still made today. You know, they might sell for a bunch on the secondary market, but they're just not the same bait, and they're not necessarily still catching them today. So maybe we'll do another video in the future regarding uh baits that were kind of renaissance type baits that started something, and they may not be around today, but they're kind of known as being one of the forefathers of a certain technique. That sounds like a fun video to do too, so we might do that as well. But let's jump into these ones. Again, these are five baits that I just grabbed that I think are very, very influential within specific categories of bass fishing.
Today's video is brought to you by the Deep Dive app. This has had an amazing new update. As you guys know, I love the water clarity feature. As you can see right here, we're looking at Grand Lake, which just had a whole pile of rain come into it. It went from being really clear to having a lot of dirty water coming in the bottom end of it. Just an amazing feature to be able to determine where the clear water is versus the muddy water. So Deep Dive has just also introduced Stream Flow. Now this is a really cool feature that shows all of the water input coming into certain reservoirs and the amount of water coming in. So they measure it in cubic feet per second. You can see in this case, this is just a small creek, but then you can see the projected as well as the previous flows. If we move up the lake here, get into one of the larger rivers coming in, you can see here that we've got 490 cubic feet per second. And then it shows you that there's not much of a change expected. Now, if there's some rainfall coming, I'm sure those projections will change. If we scoot on over here to take a look at Kentucky Lake and Barkley Lake, much larger river systems, the Tennessee River, you can see what the projected outflow is going to be there, 28,000 cubic feet per second. Go check the Cumberland River here. We got 9.4 thousand cubic feet per second. Just an amazing feature that allows you to see all of the different water flows coming into the different parts of the lake. You can see which ones might be the most affected, which ones won't be affected, see what the projected outflow schedules are. A major feature to help you catch more fish. And that's on top of some of the other new features like the wind effects. Now, the wind effects is really cool because we've had wind effects as part of the app in the past, but all it did is show where the wind was hitting the shoreline the most, as you can see from the dots, the orange and bright red dots, which indicate where the wind is really striking. But now the wind feature also indicates what the wave action is like on the lake itself. So some of the features you're going to get from this is determining where to get from place to place safely by avoiding the heavy, rough water conditions. You'll be able to determine where you may have some of the strongest current flow and some of the places where you can fish to stay protected. Now, along with that, you still have some of my favorite features like the patterns that you've got on the lake that indicate the best baits and lures to fish with. You've also got the water inflow app, which shows you where a bunch of the rain input comes in. That can be an amazing pattern to fish throughout the year. Just a great feature to have. So many positive features anytime you're fishing or using the Deep Dive app. Just points you in the right direction to catch more fish. Whether you're a tournament angler or a local fun fisherman that's just out to catch a few fish, the Deep Dive app will help you catch more fish next time you're out on the water.
So the first bait that I'm going to talk about isn't actually a hard bait, but it still fits into that category in my opinion, and that's the Spro bronzeye frog. Now, to me, this frog created the frog category, the hollow belly frog category. I know there's a lot of you out there that are going, well, what about the scum frog? What about the snag proof frog? Yes, those were there beforehand, but this is the frog that created the frog craze. Now, whether that was just based on really good marketing, whether it was because Dean Rojas was doing really well with them back in the day, in my opinion, it was just the first truly high quality hollow belly frog that was on the market that a lot of anglers, whether they were new or experienced anglers, was able to take and use at a high level. There were a lot of things that I don't think necessarily were great about some of the earlier hollow belly frogs, but this one really created that higher level frog that everyone really grabbed onto, and they realized how much more versatile a hollow belly frog could be versus just throwing into slop mats. So this is the first one that I feel like was truly the influential frog that has ever been created. This to this day, there's still a lot of people that are just trying to recreate that frog. So that's the first one. And I know people are going to disagree with me on all of these, but this is just my reasoning. The next one we're going to talk about is this guy, the rattle trap. It's really the first big lipless crankbait. Now, there were previous lipless crankbaits, Bayou Boogie, things like that. But this one specifically is the bait that created the lipless crankbait craze. This is one that was pretty cool. I actually got this for fishing the U.S. Open a handful of years ago. So it says Nevada Department of Wildlife on it. You can find a lot of rattle traps that have various logos on them, which is kind of a cool thing. Now, for me, it's not necessarily my go-to lipless crankbait right now. I still think they're a great bait. I have other ones that I prefer more, but there are a lot of really good lipless crankbait fishermen that still choose this as their number one bait to this day. And it's hard to deny that there have been millions of those sold, so a ton of fish have been caught on them. And from a lipless crankbait category standpoint, you have to talk about the rattle trap. It was made a long time ago, still sells a bunch of them to this day. Now, this is one that I do think a lot of you guys are probably going to argue with me on. I just I feel like this bait deserves the attention that it gets, and that is the Megabass Vision 110. This, again, was not the first suspending jerkbait. There were other ones on the market that were really good back in the day. And that still do catch them really well today. So, like the Rapala Husky Jerk was, for me, the first suspending jerkbait that I started throwing. Then, as I got more into it, the Rattlin' Rogue, the Smithwick Rattlin' Rogue was one I threw a ton of. The problem with those baits, though, is they had some flaws, whether it was the castability, whether it was how deep they ran. And then this guy came about, the Vision 110 by Megabass, and it really redefined jerkbait fishing. It allowed you to have a very lifelike presentation that casted extremely well, that got down to the depths that it wanted to, and it just revolutionized jerkbait fishing. I remember when these first came out, it was such an underground thing nobody wanted to talk about because it was just that good. And still to this day, there are a lot of anglers out there that feel like the Vision 110 is the best on the market. I still use it. I think it's a great jerkbait. I think we've seen, since this bait has come out, we've seen such a progression to better quality jerkbaits across the board that the gap is not nearly as big as it used to be. Meaning, when this came out, the gap between this and the other jerkbaits was huge. This was far superior. Nowadays, I think there are a lot of jerkbaits that are on the market that are every bit as good as this, but it's still one of the top quality jerkbaits out there. So that's another bait that I think you got to recognize as being one of the best on the market. Now, from a topwater standpoint, now there's a bunch of different topwaters, but this was one that I had to include in this video. This is the Head Spook. Now, there's a lot of spooks out there. The first spooks were made a long time ago. I don't know the exact year, but we're talking back probably under the Head and Dowagiac name. So we're probably talking in the 40s would be my guess. Now, they weren't necessarily plastic. I believe the first ones were actually out of wood. But the point here is the spook, the walking topwater bait, has been around forever. There's been a bunch of different versions. and it still catches them to this day. If you're looking for a walking topwater bait, there's some of the best ones out here. Now, this is the Saltwater Super Spook, the Mark Sosin one. This is one that I've had great success with, and if I see them at garage sales, I always pick them up. But the point here is, if you're talking about walking topwater baits, the Spook, in my opinion, kind of created the category and is still to this day, again, up there in terms of being one of the best performing ones. And there's a bunch of different versions that you can get. The one knocker, you can get different sizes. Like I said, there's saltwater versions. They come in almost every color at this point that you could imagine, and still absolutely smash them on this bait. So that's another one. And then the last one I want to talk about too, some of you will say it's not a hard bait, but in my opinion, this still is in that category. And that's the chatterbait. Now, this is one of my favorites. This is the Tackle Warehouse custom chatterbait. It's not the jackhammer. It's the custom, which was out before the jackhammer. In my opinion, was is on par with the jackhammer, and it's a lot cheaper. So this is one that was specifically made for Tackle Warehouse. It comes on a little wire arm, has a lot of really good movement. But the point here is, if you're talking about a bait that is created entirely new category, still is considered kind of the fan favorite, you got to look at the Z-Man chatterbait series. There's a whole bunch of different sizes now. They keep coming out with new versions. And the reality is, a lot of other companies now are trying to create a bait, a vibrating jig. And we're going to see, probably, my guess is, a whole lot more of them coming out, because I believe the patent that they utilize with this is expired as of October. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but that's what I've heard people say. So from that standpoint, you're probably going to see a lot more of them, but I think we got to recognize that the chatterbait is definitely a bait that's paved the way for a lot of other vibrating jigs. So those are 5 very influential baits that are still catching them to today. They're still a fan favorite, and to me, have made really big impressions on the fishing community. So let me know in the comment section, what are some hard baits that you think are very influential and still catching them today? I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed today's video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Stay tuned, we'll have a new video coming out tomorrow.